Thank you, Montida, for these lovely words. अब दोस्त तारीफ नहीं करेंगे तो कौन करेगा? And I want to use this occasion to try out an idea that I have actually not written about. I have written about it in parts and pieces, but did not bring it about together. And I want to bring it together to understand the larger context that we live in. You know, one of the worst things that happen to us when we face an onslaught of an authoritarian regime is that our own thinking gets fragmented. And I suspect that's what's happening to all of us. Every day the regime comes up with something new. Every day we have to oppose it. And we think of every single thing as one isolated item, which I must confess is something that I have also been doing. The government announced one nation, one election. I said this is a weird proposal. It's a medicine in search of a disease. There is no problem. Why are you bringing a solution? And a solution which is worse than the problem you want to cure. I said, ye tughlaki khel hai. The government came up with delimitation, has come up, can be tried out later. I said, this is dangerous because it has the seeds of creating a rupture. It has the possibility of creating a regional divide in India, which would be very dangerous. But we left it at that. Then the government comes up with SIR. And I said, this is idiotic. Tughlaki farman hai. Either dumb or diabolic. But having done all this, I started thinking as to whether my own reaction was correct. And I realized that I was actually missing the big picture. That what we thought were discrete and weird ideas actually fit in a whole. There is a totality that I was missing. And that's what I want to present today to you. Because I believe that what is happening in our country today is that the current regime, having failed in its attempt to change the constitution from the front door, is now seeking to alter the basic constitutional structures through discrete measures through the back door. And all these three represent such efforts. And put together, they actually can change the basic character of democratic competitiveness in our country. I must thank my colleague Vijay Mahajanji, an engineer, my colleague at Bharat Jodo Abhiyan, and fond of acronyms. Every morning he has some thought ki acha isko ye bolna chahiye. And I disagree with him very often. But in this instance, it was he who suggested, when he heard me say all these things, he said, Yogendra, you know what's happening? Desh, Kal, Patra, ye tino badal rahe. Then it struck me, okay, that really is what is happening. Desh, Kal, Patra. Desh, which is not about country. Desh, which is place, sthana. The regional dimension of our politics is being transformed. Kal, which is time, which is to do with calendar. That calendar of our democratic politics is being changed. And Patra is about the participants, the persons. Those who are eligible, those who can, the actors. And these three things are actually about changing these three dimensions. Specifically, what occurred to me on reflection is that the current regime tried a basic onslaught on our constitution in 2024. 2024 was not an ordinary election. It was not an election to choose a new government. It was a plebiscite. It was a plebiscite where Indians were being invited to put their thumb impression on a fundamental and permanent alteration in our constitution structure. In property dealing, we call it general power of attorney. You know, when you give general power of attorney to someone, you've basically handed over your house to that person. So 2024 election was about asking Indian public to give a general power of attorney to Mr. Modi for whatever he wanted to do with the country. And the significance of 2024 election is not in the numbers, not in the fact that BJP managed to form the government. The significance of that election was that people refused to give that general power of attorney. And that's the thing about plebiscites. In plebiscites, the stakes are very high. And the answer is only yes or no. There is no third answer. So while Modi government, while the BJP managed to come back to power, they did not manage to win the plebiscite that they wanted to get with complete authority to change the constitution. If they had got it, 400 पार तो छोड़ दीजिए, if BJP had managed to improve its 2019 performance even by one single seat, I can assure you formal and informal changes in everything to do with our constitutional structure would have been in place. Our preamble would have been changed. All kinds of changes would have happened. And anything you question, you would have got a simple answer. Public hamare saath hai. That's basically what 2024 was. It didn't work. They come back to power without winning the plebiscite. And the ruling dispensation then realizes that they have three problems that they have to deal with. First is a regional problem. There are parts of the country where despite all efforts, everything that BJP does, somehow they don't manage to get it. That's of course Tamil Nadu. That's of course Kerala. But in general, there is that whole stretch from Kerala to Bengal where BJP can sometimes do well. In Odisha, they did very well this time. But these are not assured places. These are places which are bound to create a trouble all the time. That's a regional problem. Second problem that they have is that some sections of society, and I do not mean only Muslims, it is the bottom of the social hierarchy, that they are not committed to BJP. BJP gets their votes. It's not that BJP doesn't get votes from them. But BJP cannot take them for granted the way it can take upper caste, upper class, urban Indians for granted. You know, while in this country everyone talks of vote bank, somehow we all seem to think that vote banks lie at the bottom of society. No one talks about the biggest vote bank of this country, which is upper caste, upper class, urban Indians. They are the most committed blind vote bank of the BJP. So the trouble was that they cannot rely upon this bottom of the pyramid to be their loyal voters. They do vote for BJP, but they somehow do not think that it's their party. Dil se nahi hai ki hamare log hai. That's a second problem. Third problem was that every 6 months or every year, you have one round of election. The party is in power at the center, but you lose a few states and people say, lo, ye to kuch nahi hai, bacha nahi. So your Iqbal, your power, your authority is constantly challenged every year or so, sometimes every 6 months, sometimes every 8 months. So, for the BJP to exercise unquestioned hegemony, there are 3 problems. Problem of region, problem of section of society, problem of calendar of elections, problem of Desha, Patra and Kala. And these 3 are the solution devised by the BJP for all these 3 problems. These are 3 mechanisms to ensure a long-term stable political hegemony of the BJP. And therefore people like me, who earlier said these are idiotic measures, these are nonsensical things, pata nahi dimag mein kahan se aa jati hain aisi cheezein, I think we were mistaken. We did not see the full picture. So there is a fuller design here at place. And that is the biggest threat to our constitutional mechanism. Let me speak for a few minutes about each of these 3. Delimitation has not happened, is not going to happen in the next year or so, but it is due. After 2026, it is due. The wording of the constitutional amendment, वैसे साहू साहब यहाँ बैठे हैं, knows more than me on all these things. The wording of the constitutional amendment is such that once the census takes place in 2026, then the government is entitled to go for a fresh delimitation. And that is why census is not being done in 2025, it's being done in 2026, so that it meets a constitutional mandate. What would delimitation mean? Delimitation can mean 2 things. One is internal redrawing of boundaries within a state, which is a normal business, which happened in 2006-7 as well, which can happen, and there should not be any objections to that. There's a minor problem there, I'll come back to that. But the real challenge of delimitation is that it would reopen the question of the quota of each state in the Lok Sabha. This question has been postponed now for 50 years. And the moment you reopen it, there would be drastic changes in the number of seats available to each state in the Lok Sabha. And the changes have a very special pattern. I'll just start telling you which state would lose. And please keep your political monitors on. Kerala will go from 20 seats to 12. Tamil Nadu from 39 to 31. Andhra Pradesh from 25 to 20. Telangana from 17 to 13. No, sorry, I mistook that. Andhra would lose 3 seats and Telangana would lose 2 seats. Karnataka from 27 to 28 to 26. Odisha would lose 3 seats. Bengal would lose 2 seats. Punjab would lose 1 seat. Do you see a pattern in it? These are exactly the areas where BJP has had a problem. And if this were to happen, and this is not a political design, mind you, it so happens that population figures would dictate it. So all that the BJP has to do is to say, well, 1 vote, 1 person, 1 weight, we are following a democratic principle. It so happens that democratic principle works exactly as per my electoral calculation. And therefore, BJP, which was responsible for extension of delimitation in 2001 during Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee's regime, would now wish to go for this democratic principle. The net result of that would be that for the first time, Hindi-speaking areas will come almost close to having a majority in Lok Sabha. Hindi belt will have 259 seats, almost majority. And if you add Hindi seats in Mumbai, in Gujarat, there are limited number of seats where Hindi walas dominate. You almost have Hindi speakers as having a majority in the Lok Sabha. Look at it differently. Earlier, South India plus either Maharashtra or Bengal would be able to block any constitutional amendment against them. It's a federal balance. That would suddenly go out. So, this is the impact of it. Now, you might say, how can we block democracy? Yes, we can talk about it. I have made a suggestion, which is somewhat radical suggestion. I have said that this is an instance where a seemingly democratic principle runs against a deep federal principle. And in this particular respect, we should respect the federal principle, and that we should just freeze the number of seats as they were in 1971 and accept it as a permanent social contract for Indian Federation. Otherwise, we just cannot move forward. Otherwise, we would be inviting a very, very serious trouble. And the reason for serious trouble is this. Forget the electoral calculations for the time being. We already have in this country two very deep fault lines. One is a linguistic cultural fault line, Hindi-speaking areas versus the rest. Second is an economic fault line, relatively rich versus relatively poor. Now that fault line is not exactly the same as Hindi versus others, but there is a very high overlap between the two. Because if you draw a line, let's say from Ahmedabad to Hyderabad, India on this side of the line is poor, India on that side of the line is rich. And the difference is sometimes as much as 1:3. So there is a linguistic fault line, linguistic cultural fault line. There is an economic fault line. And on top of it, if you put this electoral fault line, you are weakening the unity of this country. That's my argument. But I'll just leave the delimitation thing here. Move to the next thing. One nation, one election. We are given all kinds of very lovely justifications in its favor. We are told this would improve efficiency. We are told there is too much of disturbance taking place because of too many elections. Governments cannot take a decision. So let it be once in 5 years. And we will not have this kind of a disturbance. We are also told this was the original constitutional scheme, which was disturbed and disrupted later. I will not spend too much time in disputing all these arguments because to my mind these are none of these is a very serious argument. Number one, Constitution never said that all the elections of parliament and assemblies have to happen together. It so happened, Constitution provided for a parliamentary system, and in parliamentary system it is clearly understood that the 5-year cycle will get broken. Sometimes it will become 3 years, sometimes it will become 4 years. So you start the race together, but after 1 or 2 laps, someone is ahead, someone is behind. That's a standard parliamentary thing. Our constitution makers knew it. So there was no such thing in our constitution that all elections should happen together. They happened together in 1952 because that was the starting point. It mostly happened together in 57 because of Congress's dominance, but by 62 the pattern had broken. By 67 it had completely changed. So we had come to a normal parliamentary system, nothing more than that. The idea that this very serious, that this causes governmental paralysis is an idea which is very often put forward. I'm amazed at this reasoning because it so happened, the week in which ONOE report came, One Nation, One Election report came, and there were discussions in the media about that. That was the week when Haryana Assembly election was on, when the Model Code of Conduct for Haryana was already on. And in that week, Government of India had taken a decision to spend 1 lakh crore rupees for something to do with agriculture. So I said, look, you said there is a paralysis, but the government has yesterday taken this decision. Where is the paralysis? Who has stopped you? The idea that the government cannot take decisions. And in any case, I said, where is the problem with state governments? State governments, in their 5 years duration, have to have only one occasion where there would be parliamentary election, where things would stop for a few weeks. Where is the other paralysis? So are we, and I said, if you really are serious about, if you really think that there is a problem of decision making, there is a very simple solution. The Constitution allows the Election Commission to club all the elections within a 6-month period together. If you are really keen, change it from 6 months to 1 year. Give Election Commission this authority. No, they don't want that. So, have you noticed something funny? The same government which says the entire country must have elections together, 5 years of all the elections should happen on one day. The same government is not willing to have Haryana and Maharashtra elections on one day. आप जरा देखिए, पूरे देश का करवा देंगे, और महाराष्ट्र इलेक्शन और हरियाणा इलेक्शन जो 1.5 महीने के डिस्टेंस पे हुआ, which there was no need, the election commission could have easily ordered that both the elections will be held together. That they don't want. So it is not administrative efficiency. Why did that not happen? Because in Maharashtra some new concessions had to be given. A Ladki Behan Yojana had to be announced. Time लगना था उसका, तो सोचा कि हरियाणा और उसको डिटैच कर लेते हैं. So it is not about administrative efficiency. It is about a calculus of political gains and losses. That is really what it is about. Now you might say, what is the calculus of gains and losses? The calculus is simple. You would recall that Odisha had simultaneous elections. They've had simultaneous elections for the last 3-4 years, 3-4 cycles. Odisha had simultaneous elections this time. BJP won all the 20 seats in Lok Sabha, 20 out of 21. And BJP, against all expectations, also managed to get a majority in the Odisha Assembly. Now I invite all of you, Mantida, Sausa, my Odisha experts. Suppose the two elections were detached. Suppose Lok Sabha election and Vidhan Sabha election in Odisha were held separately. BJP would have obviously done very well in the Lok Sabha election. I'm assuming that all was fair. So they would obviously do very well. Will BJP be able to win Vidhan Sabha in Odisha? The simple political answer is no. BJP managed to get a majority in Odisha, Vidhan Sabha, because the elections were held together. Because once the assembly and parliamentary elections are held together, the national context dominates. The national context tends to lift the votes of any national party. I'm not saying the advantage would always go to BJP. In some cases, the advantage can come to Congress as well. But please do remember that this ONOE, One Nation, One Election, will always systematically work to the disadvantage of regional parties and will always systematically work to the advantage of the large national party. Now someone might say, But regional parties have won. They have won even in simultaneous elections. Look at Odisha. BJD has been winning this. And there have been times when Lok Sabha elections have gone one way, Vidhan Sabha elections have gone the other way. Yes, all that is true. But change means difference of 2%. Please remember, a large number of elections in this country are decided with less than 2% vote. So, what it would do, so O and OE is basically, number one, a structural change which will always work to the advantage of the dominant national party, which today happens to be the BJP. It may not be always the case, but for foreseeable future, it gives a systematic drag towards the BJP. It's like a drag. गाड़ी में कई बार ड्रैग होता है ना, थोड़ा सा खराब हो जाती है, थोड़ा सा इधर चलती जाती है गाड़ी, थोड़ी देर बाद फिर आप ठीक करते हैं, फिर यूं चलती है. This is what ONO is. It will introduce a light drag in favor of the dominant national party called the BJP. That brings me to the third issue, which is SIR. What is SIR? We all started, the first day when I looked at the newspapers, my first impression was, ठीक है यार, election से पहले voter list को जरा carefully check कर रहे हैं, what's wrong with that? And if they are doing it a little more intensively, all the better. क्योंकि कुछ तो चक्कर है बिहार की voter list में, जरा ठीक कर लेते तो अच्छी बात है, क्या बुरा है? It is the second day when I actually read the notification and I realized, although I've been barking about it for the last 2 months, but allow me to say once again, because it's possible that not everyone may have paid attention to it. Please remember, SIR is not about revision of electoral rolls in Bihar. SIR is about writing fresh voters list in the entire country. Bihar happens to be the first state where it is being tried out. The order clearly says that this is a national order, will apply to the entire country. Number two, it is not about revising voters list. When you revise, you go with the existing list and you say, okay, I delete this, I add that, etc. It is about junking the existing list and creating de novo fresh list. Number three, it is not just about creating a new voters list. It is about creating new rules of how voters list ought to be created. Because for the first time in the history of our country, the onus of becoming a voter is being shifted from the state to the citizen. So far in our country, some sarkari karamchari would come to your house. Earlier they had different names, now they are called the BLO. It's your local school teacher who comes to your house. It used to be their responsibility to ensure that your name is on the voters list. Once a voter list was made, after that, if you wanted some changes, then it was your responsibility. If you want to shift your residence, you want to get deleted, you want one addition made within 5 years. But the general responsibility of having your name on the voters list was the responsibility of the government, not of the individual. For the first time in the history of our country, SIR has shifted the onus onto the citizen. And how? They're saying, we are giving you these forms. Please fill these forms. Return the forms to us by this date. If you return it, that's fine. We'll put your name on the draft list and we'll check it. But in case you do not fill the forms, then sorry, your name is not even on the draft electoral rolls. Over. This has never happened. Now you might say, this is a technical difference. No sir, it's not a technical difference. There are two kinds of systems in the world. There are state-initiated registrations and there are individual-initiated registrations. And the difference is, wherever you have state-initiated registrations, about 95 to 100% people manage to come on the rolls. And wherever you have individual initiated registrations, like in the USA or in South Africa, only about 75-80% people ever manage to come on the rolls. It's a global experience. In fact, that's the evidence that I put before the court. It's a global experience. The moment you shift the onus onto the voter, bottom 20% will drop out. And this is not a conspiracy. अरे झंझट है, बनवाने जाना पड़ेगा, अरे घर में लड़का नहीं है, वो तो गया हुआ है आजकल, अरे छोड़ो तो, अरे कौन दस्तावेज नहीं है, कहाँ से होगा, फोटो लेने के लिए शहर में जाना पड़ेगा. 100 reasons. Poor, disadvantaged migrants, women, they all are systematically disadvantaged the moment you shift to individual driven registration. This is what SIR is doing. And fourth big change is that for the first time, in order to be on the electoral rolls, you have to give a certificate of your citizenship. Every person. This has never been the case. In fact, the Supreme Court has prohibited this from being the case. There was a famous case in the Supreme Court, Lal Babu what? Lal Babu Hussain case, where in the 1980s some election authority tried to do this, to check everyone's documents. Supreme Court has given a famous judgment, Lal Babu Hussain case judgment, to say this is not the job of Election Commission to check citizenship. It is the job of Home Ministry. If the Home Ministry says someone is not a citizen, strike him off the electoral rolls, fine. But you cannot take on the responsibility of determining the citizenship in this country. This is what SIR does. For the first time, every single person is being asked to produce a document. Right now, some of them have been given a bypass. If you were on 2003, then you get a bypass. But these bypasses will disappear very soon. Right now, especially after the Supreme Court intervention, the Election Commission is bending backwards to ensure that the number of deletions are not too much, because everyone is scandalized by the numbers. But these are temporary things. Please remember, SIR is structurally something which is designed to exclude. It is designed to disenfranchise. Please remember, all over the world, whenever disenfranchisement had taken place, it has always been done with the help of documentary requirements. पूरी दुनिया में यही खेल हुआ है. The largest disenfranchisement exercise in the world was 19th century America. Slavery was abolished. Blacks were free. They had a right to vote. But the whites will not allow them to vote. So what would the whites do? So what they did was that in the South of America, not South America, southern states of America where slavery was very prevalent, they came up with series of laws, and every single law was about saying, yes, everyone can vote if you have the following documents. And the documents were such that blacks cannot possess them. This was the game. Now look at SIR. What is SIR doing? SIR says, yes, every citizen is allowed. You must have noticed a little change. Earlier, every document of the Election Commission used to say, no voter left behind. Koi voter na chhute. Just check it now. It says no eligible voter left behind. And who will decide eligibility? I will decide eligibility. So, basically from a system where virtually every Indian was on the electoral rolls, now we have a system which is designed to exclude. So now the requirement is, okay, you produce one of these 11 documents. That's a funny story. Who decided these 11 documents? Where has this list of 11 documents come from? When I look at these things, my old researcher's instinct comes into play. And I actually looked at the background of it. So far, the Election Commission has been using 20 documents in Form 6. If you want to become a new voter in Delhi today, Election Commission gives you a bouquet of 20 documents to either prove your identity or prove your date of birth, etc., etc. Out of those 20 documents, Election Commission has picked up 11. Actually, it's a list of 18. Election Commission has come up with 2 from outside that list. But anyway. And interestingly, the documents which have had the widest possible reach are the documents which have been thrown out of the list. Documents with the lowest reach have been kept in the list. What is the document with highest reach? Aadhaar. Almost 100% penetration for adult population. For general population is 88% in Bihar, but for adult population is nearly 100%. Not included. Why? Because Aadhaar is not a final proof of citizenship. Absolutely right. Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship. In fact, the Aadhaar card says it. It is not a proof of citizenship. But sir, is your metric certificate a proof of citizenship? You come from Nepal, you study in India, you'll get a metric certificate here. Is that a proof of citizenship? Nivas Pramana Patra. Is that a proof of citizenship? It can be issued in the name of Donald Trump. It was issued in the name of Sonalika Tractor, and it was issued in the name of a dog. Last month. Is that a proof of citizenship? No. Is caste certificate a proof of citizenship? Is any patta given by government a proof of citizenship? No. Except passport and National Register of Citizenship, which is inapplicable in the case of Bihar, there is no other proof of citizenship in this country. So, why these 11? Why not the remaining? And the remaining ones, let me remind you, which are the ones that they've kept out. Aadhaar, all of us know. Epic card issued by the Election Commission of India itself. They don't accept that. Ration card, again one of the largest available cards. They don't accept. Why? Because ration card में हेराफेरी हो सकती है. ये सोनालिका ट्रैक्टर में हेराफेरी नहीं हुई, डोनाल्ड ट्रंप में हेराफेरी नहीं हुई, कुत्ते में हेराफेरी नहीं हुई, राशन कार्ड में हो सकती है हेराफेरी. On that ground they excluded ration card. Even PAN card, I was astonished to see that PAN card has much deeper penetration in Bihar than all these other documents that the Election Commission is willing to accept. I was surprised, but then people told me that now for all kinds of business transactions you need it. Even PAN card has better penetration. Driving license. All these things. So the rule of name of the game is कि जो डॉक्यूमेंट आपके पास नहीं है वो हम मांगेंगे और जो हैं वो नहीं मानेंगे. See, this reminds you of classically of what happened in 19th century America. I will invite you to come to this lecture, but the chowkidar standing outside will demand an invitation card that I know you do not have. That is the name of the game. So what's going to happen in Bihar? My own sense is that large-scale disenfranchisement is not going to happen in Bihar. Not because the scheme is not designed to. I can absolutely assure you, we have done repeated surveys. मैंने survey छोड़ दिए थे. ये इसमें, I said, all right, because the Election Commission is not giving us any information, let's go and do a survey. We did a survey. 43% people in Bihar do not have a single one of these 11 documents. वो दे सकते ही नहीं, देंगे नहीं और दे सकते नहीं है. So, if the mandate of SIR was to be implemented strictly, then it would mean that out of 8 crore Bihar population, approximately 3 crore will get a bypass because they will have some name in 2003. Of the remaining 5 crore, or let's say remaining 4 crores, at least 1.5 or 2 crore people will have to be thrown out of the voters list if they strictly implement their own SIR logic. My own understanding is that because of the noise that has been created, because of the yatra which has been taken out in Bihar, because of the vote chori campaign, and because of the Supreme Court intervention, this will not happen. The number of deletions will be kept very low. And how? How will they, have this order and still keep the things low? Election Commission will bypass its own norms, and they are trying to find ways of short-circuiting their own order by saying that if you have your name in 2003, you get a bypass. If your parents were in 2003, then you don't have to give certificates for them that they said initially. You also don't need to give any certificate. Now they are saying if any relative of yours was in 2003, then you don't have to give certificate. It is not written anywhere in the order of SIR. So the Election Commission is short-circuiting and bypassing its own order in order to ensure that in Bihar the number of deletions are kept to a minimum. Now you might say, why? Why would Election Commission do that? You always said this is about disenfranchisement. But disenfranchisement is not taking place in a large scale. My understanding is that the name of the game is to get SIR order remain on the table so as to keep it ready for Assam and Bengal. That is where the real game is. So बिहार में थोड़ा कम से काम चला लो, ज़्यादा मत काटो, एडजस्ट कर लो जैसे हिंदुस्तान में कहते हैं, एडजस्ट कर लो बिहार में. But the order should not be diluted. So Election Commission is willing to make all concessions as long as you do not change the wording of the order, so that the same order will go to Assam and Bengal and create havoc there. So to my mind, SIR is a structural measure. Forget Bihar elections, forget even Bengal and Assam. SIR is a structural measure which is designed in the long run to exclude, to disenfranchise, and people who would be disenfranchised will always be poor, less educated, and in the specific Indian case, women. Please remember, women are being asked to bring certificate about their parents being on the electoral rolls. मायके से लाना है आपको certificate. आदमी उसी गांव में बैठा है, उसको अपने माँ पिता का सर्टिफिकेट देना है, ठीक है, वो तो हो जाएगा, पर उस औरत को अपने मायके से लाना है सर्टिफिकेट. Women will drop inevitably. These are structural measures. Even if officers implement SIR order with complete honesty, these are structural measures which are bound to discriminate against poor, migrant, workers, less educated, and women. All right, finally, let me put the whole picture together and say, what are we witnessing? In 21st century, scholars who study democracy normally do not use now the binary between democracy and dictatorship, because they have realized that these are two ends of the spectrum, that very few countries can actually be called democracy, very few countries can actually be called proper dictatorship. Because in this world, in 21st century, every dictator wants to call themselves democracy. So everything has got smart, phones have got smart, dictators have got smart, things have changed. So in 21st century, what we have are hybrid regimes. Very few countries fall in this or that category. we have a series of hybrid regimes. What should India be called? Students of comparative politics for quite some time have come to some understanding, and I agree with that, I've also written on that India for the last 10 years should be called a competitive authoritarianism, which is to say a country which has some element of competition left there, where the possibility of a ruling party losing an election still exists, unlike Russia. But for all other practical purposes, in between elections, it's an authoritarian country. India belongs to that category of competitive authoritarianism. And we are not the only one. Look at Turkey, look at Hungary, look at Sri Lanka just a year and a half ago. So this is a classic case of competitive authoritarian countries in the world. 2024 election was about shifting from competitive authoritarianism to electoral autocracy. What is electoral autocracy? Electoral autocracy is what Putin does in Russia. That technically there are elections, but Mr. Putin gets 87% all the time. 87, 84, 82 or whatever. So it's electoral autocracy. It's autocracy, but which holds regular elections. Because in 20th century, it's extremely important for any authoritarian regime to draw upon image of popular acceptance. Legitimacy is critical for authoritarian regimes. Therefore, almost every authoritarian regime holds elections. So 2024 election was about shifting from competitive authoritarianism to electoral autocracy. That did not happen. Indian people stopped it. Some people might give credit to opposition parties. I think it's the people, not the parties, that prevented it. Like in emergency, finally it was not the Janata Party, it was public which stopped this. But once that attempt failed, what do you do? What you can do is, okay, I cannot turn it into electoral autocracy, but I can convert a moderate competitive authoritarianism into a nominal competitive authoritarianism. A nominal competitive authoritarianism is a system where possibility of where elections happen, there is competition. There are electoral rolls, all the formality is done properly, not like Russia. But chances of the ruling party losing the election are very, very low. They are not zero yet, but they're very low because the ground is inclined. That is what this is all about. These three measures are about India making a transition from being a moderate, I would not call robust, but from being a moderate competitive authoritarian system to a nominally competitive authoritarian system. This is what is being tried. And when we speak about challenge to the Constitution, my friends, challenge to Constitution will not come by someone saying, I want to change the Constitution of this country. No one is as foolish as that. And in any case, they've learned the lessons in 2024. It doesn't work. It doesn't pay to say, I want to change the Constitution of this country. The real challenge to the Constitution now will be through piecemeal changes by changing every little part of the architecture in such a way that you keep thinking that there are minor pieces that are being changed. But finally, you change one leg of the table, you change second leg of the table, then you change the top of the table, but you say the table remains the same. This is what is happening. And this, to my mind, is the biggest challenge to constitutional democracy in India. And I would invite all of you to join the challenge of facing it. In the last instance, as I was saying to a friend, the challenge to republic is not met by legislatures. You have minor problems, legislatures solve it. You have a slightly major problem, judiciary solves it. But when you have fundamental challenge to the foundations of a republic, you cannot depend upon legislatures, you cannot depend upon judiciary. In the last instance, public must rise to defend the republic. That is where we are. Thank you very much.